Sanskritization, Comprehensive UPSC Sociology Notes. 1. Introduction to Sanskritization. Sanskritization is a term coined by M. N. Srinivas in his study of the Kugs in South India, Religion and Society among the Kugs of South India, 1952. It explains how social mobility, moving up, is possible even within the rigid caste system. Core definition, M. N. Srinivas, the process by which a low Hindu caste or tribal or other group changes its customs, ritual, ideology, and way of life in the direction of a high, and frequently twice-born, caste. The shift from meat eating, liquor consuming, low status, right arrow to vegetarian, teetotaler, ritual following, high status. Key idea. It is an attempt to improve social status by imitating the lifestyle of the upper castes. Mains value add, keywords, positional change, not structural change. Sanskritization changes the position of a caste within the hierarchy, but it does not change the caste structure itself. The ladder remains, only the climber moves. Reference group theory, use Robert Merton's concept. The upper caste acts as a reference group for the lower caste to copy. 2. Key thinkers on Sanskritization. Thinker. Key concept, book. What they said about Sanskritization, M. N. Srinivas. Social change in modern India. Defined the concept. Initially called it Brahmanization, copying Brahmins, but realized people also copy Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, so he renamed it Sanskritization. Yogendra Singh. Modernization of Indian tradition. Called Sanskritization a form of cultural mobility. He noted that it happens alongside westernization. D. N. Majumdar. Desanskritization. Observed the reverse process. Some high castes drop their rigid rituals, like vegetarianism, to modernize, while lower castes pick them up. Harold Gould. Anticipatory socialization. Viewed Sanskritization as a rehearsal. Lower castes practice upper caste behaviors before they are accepted as upper caste. M. S. A. Rao. Social movements in India. Argued that Sanskritization was often a form of protest. Yadavs, Ahirs claimed Kshatriya status to challenge the supremacy of local landlords. 3. Characteristics of Sanskritization. Imitation. It involves copying the great tradition, rituals, scriptures, sacred thread of the upper castes. Upward mobility. It is a method to achieve higher status in the caste hierarchy. Group process. An individual cannot Sanskritize alone. The entire caste group must change its behavior to get recognition. Multi-model. It is not just about copying Brahmins. Brahman model, copying priests, veg, rituals. Kshatriya model, copying warriors, meat eating, power, honor. Vaishya model, copying merchants, frugality, trade. Ideological change, adoption of karma, dharma, papa, sin, and punya, merit, into the caste's belief system. Name change. Low castes often change their surnames to sound like upper castes, e.g., a carpenter caste adopting the surname Sharma. Time taking. It takes several generations, 30 to 50 years, for a claim to be accepted by society. 4. Prerequisites for Sanskritization, factors that help. Why does a caste decide to Sanskritize? Economic betterment. A caste usually gets rich first, via land or trade, and then seeks a ritual status to match its wealth. Political power. If a lower caste gains numbers and political clout, they demand higher respect, dominant caste status. Education. Knowledge of scriptures allows them to challenge the upper caste's monopoly on religion. Migration. Moving to a new city, village makes it easier to reinvent identity and hide low origins. 5. Critique of Sanskritization, critical analysis, crucial for scoring high marks, reinforces hierarchy. Instead of destroying the caste system, Sanskritization strengthens it. The lower caste says, I am superior to the caste below me, rather than all castes are equal. Elitist concept. It assumes the upper caste way of life is superior, and the lower caste culture is inferior. Impact on women. Often, when a low caste Sanskritizes, the status of its women drops. They stop working in fields, are forced into purdah, wailing, and widow remarriage is banned to mimic upper caste patriarchy. Conflict. It leads to social tension. The existing upper castes, dominant castes, often violently oppose the lower castes' attempt to wear the sacred thread or ride horses. A relevance for Dalits. For the untouchables, Dalits, Sanskritization rarely worked. No matter how much they Sanskritized, the pollution barrier was too strong. Hence, they chose conversion to Buddhism, Islam instead. Mains value add, comparison, Sanskritization, vertical mobility within the caste system. Westernization, mobility outside the traditional structure via jobs, education. 6. Sanskritization versus Westernization, M.N. Srinivas, feature. Sanskritization, Westernization, direction. Looking back, tradition, scriptures. Looking forward, modernity, science. Who does it? Typically lower and middle castes. Typically upper castes initially. Values. Religious, ritual purity, sacred thread. Secular, rationality, equality. Outcome. Rise in ritual status. Rise in secular status, class. Relationship. M.N. Srinivas called this a nutcracker effect. Lower castes are trying to become Brahmins, Sanskritizing, while Brahmins are trying to become British, Westernizing. 7. Is Sanskritization relevant today? Contemporary context, declining relevance. Today, people prefer secular mobility, becoming an IAS officer, doctor, engineer, over ritual mobility, becoming a vegetarian. Reservation policy. To get reservations, castes now compete to be called backward, e.g., Jats, Marathas demanding OBC status. This is called retraditionalization or competing for backwardness, which is the opposite of Sanskritization. Continuing relevance. It still happens in rural pockets where ritual status matters. Guru culture. Followers of modern Babas, gurus often adopt vegetarianism and Sanskritic prayers, which is a modern form of Sanskritization. New exam-relevant additions, score boosters. 8. The concept of dominant caste, linked concept, often asked with Sanskritization, definition. A caste is dominant when it is numerically strong and owns the land, not necessarily because it is Brahman. Role. The lower castes usually imitate the dominant caste of their specific village, e.g., imitating Jats in Haryana or Vokaligas in Karnataka, not the Brahmins. 9. Desanskritization, Dalit assertion, trend. In recent times, Dalit movements have rejected Sanskritization. Logic. Instead of copying the upper caste, they assert pride in their own culture, e.g., beef festivals in universities, Ravana worship instead of Rama. Term. This is known as Dalitization or cultural assertion, refusing to accept the upper caste as the ideal reference group. 10. Tribal caste continuum. Process. Tribes entering the caste fold via Sanskritization. Example. The Gonds of central India claiming to be Raj Gonds, Kshatriyas, by adopting Hindu gods and rituals. This shows how tribes historically melted into the caste system. 11. Conclusion. Sanskritization was a vital safety valve in traditional India. It gave people hope that their status wasn't frozen forever. Summary. It explains how culture flows in India, from top to bottom. Critique. However, it failed to liberate the lowest strata, Dalits, and often increased patriarchy. Final verdict. In 21st century India, democracy and capitalism have become bigger engines of mobility than Sanskritization. As Deepankar Gupta argues, the caste system is no longer a hierarchy of purity, but a rivalry of power.